Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Then go over to morbidlybeautiful.com as we are now part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcasting Network.
Attention all campers.
The All-American Spook Show welcomes you to enroll in Camp Spook Show this summer. We have activities for all ages, including archery, canoeing, swimming, and
Running for your lives.
Lore of the campfire, telling of his horror, lost in the woods with the madman and the stars. Don't laugh at the tales, heed if you call him the legend lives. Beware the madman Mars. The legend lives. Beware the madman Mars.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the All-American Spook Show podcast. I'm Josh and I'm joined here with Donny.
Yo.
And the Professor Smoak.
Oh.
Willie couldn't join us once again. He's on assignment. He ducked out last week for hot chili, which, you know, bravo, right? he's the smart one there. He got out of that one, but unfortunately he's not here for Madman, which is a marked improvement, but that's a pretty low bar. So, but we'll get into all of our thoughts on Madman and everything. But one last thing to clean up the diarrhea from hot chili was that I did get a chance to talk to Will, and he gave one cannonball, just like Donny and I did. And Smoak, you gave hot chili 1 1/4, and then Austin Trunick, author of the Canon Film Guide, he gave it 2 cannonballs. So I say all that to say that you add them up, do the math. The consensus was 1 1/4 cannonballs. That's the final tally for old hot chili. Not good.
We're still young in the the Cannon Fodder series, but that's easily the lowest rated. Cannon.
That's only the third Cannon Fodder we've done, but we did do 2 other Cannon movies, like you mentioned in that episode, 10 to Midnight and New Year's Evil. And none of those other 4 films got anywhere close to this.
Austin, he gave it 2 cannonballs, so he knows something that we don't know, and that is he's probably seen just about every, if not every, Cannon film.
Yeah.
So he knows that there's some other stinkers out there that we'll probably at some point get to. And I don't know that I really want to see anything worse than hot chili, but
I can think of 1 or 2, that probably are as bad or if not worse. But yeah, and I haven't seen anywhere near the amount of Cannon films that he's seen. So yeah, we'll take his word for it. But that's pretty bad. If he has to give that one too because there's worse. My God, what have we done? All right, so yeah, today we are we're going back to the horror reviews now that we've got hot chili in the rearview mirror, and this was Smoak's turn in the rotation. So Smoak, what have you brought for us today?
We got Madman from 1981, same year that The Burning, your choice was The Burning, or an old one, same year. Also, there's another similarity that we'll get to as we go into the story. I'm sure y'all know that similarity too, but we'll get to that, I guess, as we come to it.
Definitely a lot of similarities here because a lot of these movies, let's face it, they're all kind of the same movie in a way, but they do have things that differentiate themselves from the others, that do make them unique. But and also another thing, there was a weird release date thing with this one that we'll get in, I'll get into in just a minute. But as far as like when this movie actually came out, because it says 1981, but it wasn't 1981 when it eventually saw the full light of day, but we'll get into that. But before we get into the background and anything else, I'll go ahead and throw out the usual information. You can contact us at allamericanspookshow@gmail.com. Of course, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the Slasher app, TikTok. All these links are down in the show notes, the link tree there. You click on that and it should take you to everywhere you might want to go, including our YouTube page, where over there, every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. East, we do Deadline Horror News Live, where we talk about the latest horror headlines, conventions, new releases, all kinds of stuff going on. That's every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. East. And, of course, we have our TeePublic page, where you can go get logoed merchandise, other cool designs that we've put up there. And one of our big attractions is patreon.com/AA Spookshow, where we have all kinds of bonus stuff. Bonus podcasts every month, like Spookshow Rewinds. The biggest draw there is probably Crapsterpiece Theater. We do those every month. Professor's Retro Review articles, tons more. Early access to the podcasts over there. So we encourage you to go check that out and become a patron of the Spook Show to help us out. So without any further build-up, I'll go ahead and toss to the trailer for Madman.
Many strange things happen around here.
There is a tale.
It was a night like tonight, many years ago.
There is a legend.
If you say his name above a whisper, he'll get you.
There is a warning.
On certain nights, when the moon is full, he's out there stalking in the woods.
There is a madman.
His name is Mars. Madman. Mars.
Mars! Madman Mars! Here we are! Come and get us, Madman!
Don't you realize you're fooling with things beyond your control?
Madman. There is no escape.
All right, there you go. That's the trailer for that. So, Donnie, I'm going to assume, well, I guess I shouldn't assume, you never know with you, it's 50-50. Mm-hmm. Is this the first time you've seen this or no?
I have seen it before. It's been so long, man. Mm-hmm. I probably saw this in the mid-90s.
So either way, it's been a while.
Yeah. It's
Smoak, I'm sure it hasn't been a while for you. It was probably just last week, right?
Oh, it's been a little bit. I mean, it hasn't been quite as long as back in the 90s, but it's probably been a couple of years anyway, last time I've seen it. Maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3. I've seen it more than a handful of times since it came out on VHS. Probably maybe not including this time, probably maybe 5 other times that I've seen it. So it's not one that I've seen, as it's kind of like The Burning in that sense. And also, The Burning was one that I didn't. The video stores in my hometown, there's a lot of them, and they had all kinds of crap, all kinds of stuff you couldn't. That you would have a hard time finding when Blockbuster came along, or even Hollywood came along. Some of these just kind of obscure things that the mom and pop video stores had. But for some reason, it took me a while to track down The Burning. I didn't talk about that on that episode, but I don't know why. I don't know. None of the ones I finally found one. There was like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 video stores in a 20-mile radius, and I had a membership to just about all of them. Mm-hmm. I did track down The Burning, but long story short on that, these two movies. I've seen them less times than I've seen, say, the Friday the 13th films, or or Maniacs, or things like that. But just because they weren't quite as easy to find as the Friday the 13th films in the video stores. And when I did find Madman and The Burning, I of course dubbed them off immediately, so I'd have my bootleg to watch whenever I wanted. Oh wait, not.
well, ixnay. Yeah, I mean, myself, like, I remember watching this at some point back in the 90s or early 2000s, and then it just kind of went away. Once, it was kind of like, once I've seen it, it wasn't one that, like, I sought out to watch over and over again or anything like that. I remember enjoying it, but just, it wasn't something I sought out. And then I saw it again, like, a couple years ago. And, it's up there, for me personally. But this time around, I watched it on Tubi. Now, I will add a couple things before we move on. Number one, we are a spoiler-filled podcast, so for whatever reason you haven't seen Madman, hit pause now. And it is available to watch over on Tubi, Pluto TV, and the Roku channel as of the recording of this episode here in July of 2022. Those things change month to month. Could be on a completely different service by the time we get to August. But as of right now, Tubi, Pluto, and the Roku channel, you can watch it for free. But I watched it on Tubi, and there was a pretty good version of it on there, although I don't know if it was like the that more recent 4K restoration or anything like that. It didn't look quite that good.
Yeah, I thought. Oh, you said the Tubi one was a 4K restoration.
I don't think it was. I'd be surprised if it was.
What I saw was 4K, and this movie was shot in 1980 or whatever. Came out in 81. Semi low budget. Shot mostly at night. So I don't know that the 4K was really necessary, and I don't know that I really noticed 4K that much. As far as it looked good, but I mean, it looks a lot better than the VHS did, being washed out and whatnot. And probably it looks better than the DVD did. I used to have the Anchor Bay DVD. Looks better than that, but I don't know that if you're looking at this for such a great quality version of Madman, tons better than any other prior ones that came out, you're probably not going to notice too huge of a difference with it. That being said, though, I never watched 4K as a proper way. I guess I never used that, whatever that filter is. You know what I'm talking about, where people get the soap opera effect or whatever, where it gives a clean, crisp movement.
It looks more like somebody shot it off of like a really good camcorder or something like that, kind of weird movement. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so crisp and clean that it makes it look fake at that point. It doesn't have the film quality anymore, so I just don't like that filter, so I keep it off. So somebody might argue that, well, you're not really getting the full 4K effect, and that's probably true, but I still think that the 4K disc, even if you don't watch it with that filter, it still has a little bit better quality than, say, just a standard Blu-ray. At least I think so anyway. Yeah.
I'm looking at them. Like I said, if I'm talking about a 4K, people might think that I'm talking about that look or the full-on 4K effect. I just don't like that effect. I never even turn it on, so I can't really judge how it looks when you have that filter on. But other than that, it's probably the best I've ever seen it look prior to any other home video release.
I guess we'll go ahead and dive into some of the background here. Now, it was originally titled Madman, The Legend Lives. And then I guess sometime after that, they just changed it to Madman. But it did have two separate working titles while they were filming. One was Madman Mars, and another one was just The Legend Lives. So I think Madman Mars would have... I mean, Madman's fine. I mean, I'm cool with that, as a title.
Mm-hmm.
It draws your eyes, draws your attention, either way. But I think Madman Mars would have been kind of cool, too. Although that might have confused some people to think maybe it's sci-fi or something, because Mars, maybe that's why they dropped it.
Yeah, well, there's a weird, interesting thing in there I heard Gary Sales, the producer, say about the Mars, where that came from. And it's something that you would never in a million years think of influencing this movie, but he said he was listening to Holtz, the classical composer, Holtz, The Planet, and there's Mars, of War is one of the songs on that composition, and he was listening to that, and I mean, if you ever listen to that song, I mean, you wouldn't think, how does that equate to this movie at all? I mean, but
yeah, I mean, you could just as easily say, well, I was looking at a list of the planets and Mars stuck out. There we go, or I was eating a Mars bar,
Yeah, I guess not so much the tone of the music, but I guess just the name Mars.
Just,
like they would use this as his name or whatever, and change it to the Z or the spelling or whatever.
Now I'll read this little excerpt. This is straight from Wikipedia about like how it got, it came out and was distributed. This is what I mentioned earlier. It remained in distribution limbo through 1981 until being acquired by Jensen Farley Pictures at the end of the year. And then in January of 1982, it screened in Wilmington, Delaware, random, and Detroit, Michigan. It had its premiere in New York City the following year on January 7th, 1983, and in Los Angeles on February 18th, 1983. Then over the course of the year, it became a sleeper hit in the drive-in circuit and ultimately grossed $1.35 million in the United States. So that's where I say, it's listed as a movie from 1981, but it looks like, to me, it didn't really see the full light of day until 1983.
Also, then, I guess that's a good point to talk about the fact that we mentioned earlier about The Burning did come out in 1981, and the fact that movie is based on Cropsey, and this movie was actually based on Cropsey.
Yeah.
Supposed to be Cropsey in not Madman Mars. And I guess when they got wind that the other one was being made and that it would probably be finished before theirs, they decided to change it to, still keep the same storyline. Basically, it's a Cropsey-type folklore storyline, but just changing the name to Madman Mars, a few other little details.
Yeah, and that's interesting, too, because like how this movie would have been different if it was more directly about, say, the Cropsey, even they just call it Cropsey, whatever, if it so then you could even more directly compare it to The Burning. That'd be interesting, to see what kind of movie would have come out of that.
Oh, yeah.
Which one in the end would have been better. It's almost like when we kind of compared when we talked about The Howling last summer and An American Werewolf in London. It would have been something like that, in my opinion. You know, some type of close comparison.
Yeah, it's strange. It's kind of strange how things, you know, nothing's planned, but things fall together that way sometimes. Where there's two exactly the same types of movies being shot together and kind of going to come out around the same time, without it being not a copycat thing. It's just a fluke, and that's basically kind of what happened with The Burning and Madman as well.
I couldn't find exactly when this came out on, you know, VHS. So I assume sometime after, say, 83, probably 84 to 86, somewhere around there, you would imagine. I'm not dead sure. But it was released on DVD in 2002 by Anchor Bay. That one had a non-anamorphic transfer. And then it was released on DVD again by Code Red in September of 2010. This one was anamorphic and had, you know, a lot of bonus materials. But apparently it had an inferior transfer to the Anchor Bay DVD because it lacked, from what I read, it lacked blue hues present in the original negative. But then in May of 2015, Vinegar Syndrome released it on Blu-ray for the first time, and that's where the new 4K restoration from the original negatives came from. So I assume that's what you watched, or is that a different, newer one?
No, it was that Vinegar Syndrome 4K restoration. So I never saw Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray, but I did have before this, I had the Anchor Bay disc, and yeah, it was, like I said, non-anamorphic. An improvement over the VHS, but not a whole lot. Just as much better than either of those, really. Probably the best it's ever going to look.
But it basically saw the full light of day, like we said, by the year 1983. But it was released by the Legend Lives company, or that's who it was produced by, and then it was distributed, as we mentioned earlier, by Jensen Farley Pictures. It was rated R, total runtime of 1 hour and 28 minutes, and it was filmed at the Fish Cove Inn in Southampton, New York, from November to December of 1980, with a budget of roughly, from what I could tell, about $350,000.
Yeah, I read that as well.
I think that's funny that, like, also too, and I'm sure we'll talk about this once we get into the movie itself, is like, this one, if you think about it, kind of falls a little bit out of our criteria for Camp Spook Show because it's a fall camp. What the fuck? Who goes to a fall camp? Because they make direct mention of, like, all right, we're about to let everybody loose, or you're about to take a break or whatever because Thanksgiving.
Wait, what?
So yeah, like, what kind of camp? You know, when all the kids are at school, this place is in session. And then I only mentioned that to say that one of the things that I heard in the background of this was that they started losing the color of the leaves.
Yeah.
So they go through and they start painting the leaves green and stuff. But then they make direct mention of the fact that it's in the fucking fall. So, like, why go through the trouble of painting the leaves green when it's supposed to be the fall?
Yeah, I don't know if that sounds like maybe they were gonna do it in the summer and then they changed things because of, first of all, they had to paint the leaves, but also I heard another story where they had to hot glue leaves because as it got on later into the winter, the leaves had totally fallen off the trees. Not only did they turn brown, but they fell off.
Yeah, like I said,
they had to go and glue these onto the trees.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw it wrapped up. It was like basically mid-December, so you know you're only like a week or two away from Christmas by the time this thing wrapped up. So yeah, like there's probably no leaves by the end. But it also is interesting. You kind of mentioned it too, how it's nighttime throughout the movie. I think this is like one of the rare examples where the movie is entirely shot in the dark.
Yeah, the no day scenes.
Yeah, at all. It's all in the dark. Usually, even still at that time period, you see a lot of movies that would shoot day for night. Mm-hmm. They didn't do this here. You can clearly tell it's in the middle of the night.
And I can't think of the cinematographer's name right now, and it's not the name is not the name that's on the credits. IMDb might have it right, but the producer said that for whatever reason they wanted to change. He wanted to change his name or not use his real name. And but it is the same cinematographer that did This 45. So, and that movie had a lot of good nighttime shots. And
I have a feel.
James Lemo.
James.
Oh yeah, that's it.
That's his real name or his fake name?
Oh, that's his real name, the Lemo name.
Okay, no, I got it here. Yeah, it's cinematography by James Lemo, but he went by the name James Momel. So they what do they call that when you mix up your name? It's like an anagram, or they basically just flip the spelling of his name around. It's not Lemo, it's Momel.
The only other thing I can think of is possibility maybe he was contract. I mean, he was. I don't know what you see there for his credits, but I know he did This 45. He might have been contract for something else. And
I think what I was going to say a second ago is what I saw somewhere in my research for this movie apparently this movie was non-union. So that's why there's a lot of people in this movie that, like, they didn't go by their real names, including, like, some of the stars, which we'll go over here in just a second.
Mm.
That's why. So, like, I guess they didn't want to get blackballed or whatever the fuck, so they all had fake names, you know?
So, yeah, Smoak, you hit the nail on the head. It's looks like his first DP role was Miss 45. And then he did Madman directly after this. Directly after that.
I mean, it takes somebody with some talent. If you're going to shoot a movie completely in the dark, it takes somebody with some talent to get the lighting and everything right for the film, the film. Otherwise, you end up with or you shoot day for night, and
a crew of people that know what they're doing and know how to light it and shoot it right and everything. Yeah.
Godsend when you're working with that low of a budget too.
But it was directed and screenplay by Joe Giannone. Very brief filmography. As in, basically he was just the assistant director on the Clonus horror and maybe something else, and that was it. Like, he didn't really do much. Unfortunately, he died in December of 2006 at the age of 60, so he's no longer with us. But this is also a story by Joe Giannone and the producer, Gary Sales, who would also be known as being the first assistant director on Vampire's Kiss, the Nicolas Cage flick. And, of course, one of our favorites here, that I know we will get to on Crapster Theater, guarantee it, Mr. Nanny. He was the first assistant director on Mr. Nanny. But he has gone on to some, medium amount of success. I mean, he's still active today. So there's Madman and Mr. Nanny. There you go, Donny.
Oh man.
I know that he said before they made this movie, they had to decide, him and Giannone, what they were going to do, like whether they were going to do. They had three options: either porn, action, or horror. Porn at that time was like pretty much run by the mafia. They said that was off the table. Action required a bit too much of a budget, to get the stunts and all that stuff right. So that was off the table. So they just and Madman was the result.
Well, there you go. At least it turned out good. At least there's that. Music in this movie was by Stephen Horlick. I only mention him because it's interesting for him. He actually won a Grammy later in life after this for the theme for Reading Rainbow, which I thought that was
worthy.
Yeah. So the dude that did the music for Madman is the same dude that did the Reading Rainbow theme. So that's his claim to fame. The movie stars Galen Ross as Betsy. Now, but in this movie, she's not credited as Galen Ross. She used the fake name of Alexis Dubin. Once again, for the same reasons we mentioned earlier. She has had a good long career, but mostly as a documentarian. Because as far as like starring roles, she only had this movie, Dawn of the Dead, and Creepshow, which we already talked about her briefly, all the way back at episode 17 when we did Creepshow. So, but I think that was pretty much it for her. Like everything else since then is work on her documentaries. And I think I saw or read somewhere where like apparently this movie she never talks about. Like I guess maybe you get her to talk about Dawn of the Dead or Creepshow possibly. I don't know, but she won't talk about Madman. So go figure.
I heard her say in an interview about the reason why she stopped acting after Creepshow. It was the scene. She was shooting the scene. Her and Ted Danson were basically getting covered by the water, and she was saying something to Romero, and she had an epiphany of like, why am I doing this? I should be on the other side of the camera. Then I wouldn't be stuck in this hole with this water covering my head. She didn't be director. So at that point, she didn't act at all anymore and became a director of the documentary.
Yeah. But she is as far as like recognizable faces, she is it really for, in this cast. But we also have Tony Nunziata as TP. But in this movie, once again, he's using a fake name, Tony Fish. There's nothing in particular to speak of for him. He has a fairly short list, but he's the guy that sang the song, I Don't Need Words. That's the song that's playing in the hot tub scene in this movie. That cheap ass song that is playing.
Yep.
That's him singing the song to his own scene, his own lovemaking scene. I guess there's something pimp about that, right? Like, I'm going to shoot this sex scene and then I'm going to sing the damn song. Fuck all of yous. But see,
in that hot tub, that whole hot tub scene, I did hear Galen Ross say something about that on the 4K disc special features. She mentioned that the love scene that they had in the hot tub, she had given him some advice on the kissing scene. In other words, I guess how to make it look good, how to do this or whatever. And then he took offense to that, got out of the hot tub and went into the sauna and stayed in the sauna for he just stayed in there. And finally took the DP, I think, to go in there and say, hey, or to talk him out of there, saying, well, what if we do it in a comedic sort of way? We shoot the hot tub scene and kind of humor in it or whatever. And then he finally came out.
Yeah. Oh, there's definitely some humor in that scene. There's no doubt about that.
I don't know why. Yeah, definitely.
And the song that he sang, "I Don't Need Words," added to the humor of the scene. So that's what we got. Tom Candela as Richie. Probably the most notable thing that our listeners would recognize him from is he was in the movie Night Shift. And of course, Paul Ellers as Madman Mars. He still does stuff today, but probably the only other things that you may recognize him at all for would be the movie called Ink and Steel, and then another more recent one called Devil's Five, which looks like, I saw the trailer for it. It doesn't look all that good, but it looks, like a kind of an indie, kind of flick. But there you go. That's the cast and crew and everything. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to point out before we get into the heart of the matter here?
I did notice that, I'm sorry, I read where there was a time during filming where that Paul Eller's son was born. He went to the hospital in not really full makeup. I'm sure he took his mask off or whatever it was, but he had went to the hospital basically covered in fake blood and was holding his newborn son. And I think his son got a credit in the film, like special thanks or whatever. And there was also another little note that because they were shooting this. They were shooting this in 1980, I believe it was.
Yeah, it was November to December of 80.
Yeah, they stopped filming for one day after it was announced that John Lennon was shot and killed.
Yeah.
So they stopped filming for a day, and then I guess out of respect or whatever, and resumed.
Yeah. Well, obviously that was a big deal, a really big deal at the time. So yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah. That's it for me.
One other thing I forgot to mention. This movie was nominated for a Saturn Award in 1982 like I said, nominated for Best Low Budget Film. Smoak, you'd probably be interested to hear what the nominees were in 1982 for Best Low Budget Film for the Saturn Awards. Madman, The Unseen, Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, Alice Sweet Alice, and Fear No Evil. And the winner of the Best Low Budget Film Saturn Award was Fear No Evil.
Oh, Fear No Evil.
Yep.
I would have said that, Madman up against those movies. As much as I like Madman, I might have would have went Alice Sweet Alice even on those. I don't know if y'all seen that one, but that's some stiff competition.
Yeah, I'm sure all those movies we'll probably get around to at some point or another. But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Why fuss and fret about dinner? Why not have it right here? Yes, this drive-in offers everyone in the family a real picnic treat for dinner. We've got delicious sandwiches with all the trimmings and your other dinner favorites, plus whatever you want to drink, hot or cold. Come early before the show starts, or eat while you're being entertained, or at intermission time. So why fuss? Give your family a tasty dinner at this drive-in.
For you, the listeners of the All-American Spook Show podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. So, as what we normally do is we'll go over to Audible and we'll just type in, say, like, something that has to do with the movie or whatever to see what pops up. So I just go in and type in Madman, and here's what we get. The Professor and the Madman. So that's you and Madman Mars, Smoak.
Oh, all right. Cool.
By Simon Winchester, and that one's almost 7.5 hours long. So there you go. The Madman by Khalil Gibran. That one's that one's only not even quite an hour long, so that's pretty short. We'll go with one more that's just a little longer. Madman in the Woods. Life Next Door to the Unabomber by Jamie Gehring. That one's almost 10.5 hours long. So, and that's it looks like an Audible exclusive. So, yeah, there's a lot that pops up when you type in Madman. A lot.
That's the closest you're going to get, though, to this movie, Madman in the Woods. Although it's nothing at all to do with Madman Mars.
Completely different type of Madman. But yeah, anyway. So if any of those interest you, you can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/spookshow. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spookshow for your free audiobook. So, as we normally do here lately, I'll just hop over to IMDb and look at their plot summaries, and we've got two here. One, literally one sentence, and then a little longer. The first one is the one sentence IMDb synopsis of a legendary psychopathic murderer stalks a summer camp. Even that, though, the summer camp thing, right? There's that again. It's like, they make it abundantly clear this is a fall camp, not a summer camp. But whatever. So the last one that we have is posted on IMDb by Umberto Amador. It seems like I've read that name before. Like there was an Umberto Amador plot summary that we've read before on another movie. But either way, at a summer camp for youths, cocky preteen calls out the name of mass serial killer Madman Mars. Suddenly, counselors are being maimed and slaughtered in various ways by the backwoodsman who has returned when his name was called. So there we go. That's the plot summaries over there. And that pretty much, I mean, you can guess what this movie's about. It's like I just said, dude is like this mythic. It's almost like Bloody Mary. You call out his name. What did they say? Like, you say his name above a whisper, he's going to come kill your ass, basically, right? That's the premise.
Yeah.
So some dickhead, Richie, jumps up and says, Madman Mars, blah, and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, verbatim. That's what he said.
Yeah. Madman Mars, blah, 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 blah. That's what, just like that. But yeah, like right out the gates, the fall camp thing, like, that was just weird. Because now they did point out, like, these are like gifted children kind of thing. Like they're all really smart kids or something, so maybe that's why they're in a fall camp. Like, they're too smart for school, so they get to go to fall camp up until Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right at the beginning, though, that campfire scene, I love that.
That was cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sets the scene and explains everything the way it needs to. Like they don't spend a whole hell of a lot of time on it. It's just that first 10 minutes or so. Campfire scene. TP gets up and sings that song, the story of Madman Mars, which you get a slightly
better than the Hot Tub song.
Yeah, no doubt. And you do get a better rendition of it at the end of the movie. Remember, they play the song again at the end, so you get a slightly better version. But I think it sets the scene, of the creepiness and everything of the campfire, and tells the story as much as you need to know about the story. And then, bam, here we go. You're into it. So I thought it was a pretty well done scene to kind of set things up there. As far as go down the list of the kills, the first one was that random drunk. What is he, like the camp chef or something? Dippy?
Yeah.
Dippy, yeah.
He just walks up, gets his throat slit, so he's the first to go. The second one was TP getting being hung. Well, I'd say that's kind of an iconic scene from this movie, though, right, Smoak?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The hanging scene where he's sitting there fighting it, right? He's like pulling himself up on the rope, and then he actually gets contact with a limb on his hands, and you think, oh, he's pulling himself up. Okay, maybe he'll get out of this. But no, then Madman comes over there, and his belt buckle, which also says TP on it, like his own initials.
There's real fancy.
TP,
TP buckle.
And then he pulls him down by the belt buckle and snaps his neck. He pulls him off the tree limb.
I think I need a TP belt buckle. I'm not a belt buckle guy at all, but no, I won't. No, if I had one, it's got to say TP. What's that stand for? Toilet paper. Leave me the fuck alone.
Nobody knows what his name stands for. That was another thing I saw in one of those interviews on the special features, that they didn't. Nobody. Well, I don't know about nobody, but the actor who played Madman, Ellers.
Yeah, Paul Ellers.
He couldn't remember his name at all, and maybe Gary Sales and Joe Giannone that wrote the script, maybe they knew what TP stood for. But he did mention about Quentin Tarantino in some convention or something or other mentioned, oh yeah, it stands for toilet paper. He didn't make the toilet paper.
Aha, I was right, inadvertently.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, toilet paper. I guess in the end it doesn't matter, what the fuck, but yeah, that is kind of random.
Yeah.
The fancy belt really sets the mood, sets the whole thing off, really.
If only you had whipped it off and like Pootie Tang.
Pootie Tang. Talk about crabster piece. There you go. Pootie Tang.
Sure, we'll get to it.
Yeah. I'd say that falls somewhere between Colt Corner, at that weird mystic place of between Colt Corner and Crabster Piece Theater. That's Pootie Tang.
Oh man.
So yeah, the next death is Dave gets the axe. Then after that's where Stacy gets decapitated by the truck hood. Now that's perfect placement too. That's a clean fucking clean cut with a fucking old truck hood. And then I love when that has happened, and then it's Ellie that's out in the woods with Bill. Bill and Ellie, they're a couple. they go out, because throughout the movie, everybody, one by one, as these movies usually do, somebody like, oh, so-and-so's missing. You need to go find them. And then the next person goes missing. You need to go find them. That's the formula. So Bill and Ellie go out together, and they're out looking for Stacy, whoever the fuck they're looking for. And she looks over, and she sees Madman over the body of Stacy with no head, and then she starts screaming or whatever. But I love that Madman is just looking at it when she looks over at him, and then Madman is just looking at the body like, God damn. I just chopped this bitch's head off with the hood. It's like he didn't even, I didn't understand my strength, I underestimated myself. It's just the way he was standing there looking at it, and then like he hears Ellie like, huh? And then looks over, and starts chasing her. But yeah, I thought that was hilarious. And then when Bill and Ellie she makes him go over to the truck, because I just saw some heinous shit. But of course they go over there and the body's gone. Madman's nowhere to be found. And then they just jump in the truck and try to start it up, and it's like, oh, opens up the hood, and there Stacy's head is stuck in the engine.
Now, I don't know if the version y'all watched on Tubi, you said Tubi?
Yeah, I was on Tubi where I watched, yeah.
I don't know if the audio is cleaned up or not, but I'd never heard this before. But when he first tries to start the engine, you can hear a little bit of a meaty, like the fan blade in the head.
Yeah, you can hear it. Yeah, it's like.
Oh, you can hear it. I never heard that before.
Yeah. But then right after that is where he kills Bill. Now, did he break Bill's back? Because he's just holding. This is as he's chasing Bill and Ellie both. He just grabs a hold of Bill and holds him up in the air. Then I think you hear a crack or something. So I assume he just snapped his back.
I think it's I assume that they just didn't have the budget to do like Jason did in part 6. I think it was part 6 where Jason snapped that guy, basically just bends him in half almost. I guess they didn't have the budget to really do that, so they just implied that I
think it's still a pretty cool visual shot though, where he's holding him up in the air, But it's kind of cheap ass because the noises he's making doesn't match his mouth, and then you just hear some kind of crack. I was kind of expecting like you said, just over the knee, Bane breaking Batman's back, snap, but no, you didn't. Yeah. No, you didn't get that. It's just they kind of bitched out on that one. But like you said, the budget, I'm sure. But then right after that, Ellie gets the axe to the chest. So there goes Bill and Ellie. And then I guess that's like the last death. Well, no, Betsy, right? There's Betsy because she is chased around, or I guess she's kind of chasing after him, right? And then she ends up getting slashed on the cheek or something, and then he just drags her and does the old Leatherface on the meat hook.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not quite as effective as the Leatherface Texas Chainsaw one, but effective enough,
Yeah.
You actually get to see the spike coming out, whereas in Texas Chainsaw, you just, he hangs on the hook, but you don't see it come out the front of her. So there was a little bit more gore in this meat hook hanging.
What do we think about the way all this plays out at the end? So Betsy, like I just described, she gets meat hooked. Then she pulls out a knife and stabs Madman in the back, and he's just, bah! And then
he's grunting throughout the entire.
Yeah, well, he never. I don't think he ever says a word. He's just like a Sasquatch,
fucking grumble.
She stabs him in the back, and then the place just catches on fire. So obviously you assume Betsy's dead, right? Or maybe that's her last gasp, right? She stabs him. She's dead. But then he just kind of slowly turns around what the fuck? You stabbed me in the back, and then the place catches on fire, and then Max, who's the camp counselor, or the lead camp director, I guess that would be what he is. Mm-hmm. He finally shows back up, but he finds Richie, who, by the way, Richie's the one that started all this shit, right? By standing up at the campfire and yelling out "Madman Mars," and then the whole movie he's just slowly walking around the house, out in the woods. Madman never fucks with him, but he's the one that emerges from the woods. Max finds him, and he says something like "Madman Mars is real" or something like that, right? And then that's when they play the song. So, I mean, what do we think about how all this goes? As far as all your final girl tropes are kind of out the door here, right? There is no final girl, even though you would think she would have been it, right?
Yeah. I get the gist that they were trying to mix it up a little bit, because I don't know about all, but most of your movies prior to this slasher films did have a final girl. And also, like you said, Richie, he would have been the first one to go if this were a convinced, or, the more conventional style. Like he's the one that caused the mess, basically, and he's wandering out in the woods. He would generally be the first one you would think that would get killed, but he's the one that survives all the way to the end.
Yeah, and if he's not the first one to go, you think he is eventually definitely getting it, but nope.
And the kids, that's the only other people that live.
Well,
right?
true, yeah. And Max.
I kind of like that they did that. They didn't go like textbook.
Yeah.
I love that. That reminded me, and I actually made a note of that. And I kind of forgot to go back to it when she's got all the kids on the bus and like they're taking off, and then he just runs out in front of the bus and she stops, and then of course he immediately goes over there and tries to get in the door, and then she grabs I don't know what, broom handle, some kind of wooden stick, and she's just wearing his ass out, man. Like, it's like 5 minutes of her just like slapping the fuck out of his hand, and then eventually he's like, oh. He eventually draws back, and then but then she's like, all right, I got to go take care of this. For some reason, like she takes it upon herself, like I'm the one that's got to end this. That's where I think it does differentiate itself, because like, she's clearly like the heroine of the story. They've set it up. Here we go. And I guess in a way she was, but, ultimately, he killed her ass and then he survives, So like, that's where it really is a whole lot different from a lot of these type of movies for sure. I guess the ending is fine, especially if you put it in the context of maybe they're thinking sequel, right? Like, cause they definitely set it up for, you could do it again, right?
Well, yeah, and I did hear a little bit about that they were going to do a sequel. I don't know why it never came to fruition, but that and a possible in the sequel that Richie would be blamed for the murders.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
Yeah, you could see that. You could see that. I mean, because like he's the one that kind of started it, right, in all their eyes. Because at the campfire, he's the one that starts this shit, and then at the end, he's one of the last ones standing. So you could see that somebody might try to pin it on him, kind of thing. So yeah,
but
there might be a story there.
One thing I did read, kind of tied to that, is said, thing is, it said, a sequel hasn't been made yet. I was like, well, it's been 40 fucking years. Even Galen Ross, doesn't want to fucking talk about it.
No. Yeah, but, I'd say this
nobody used their fucking name.
I'd say in some ways, though, this is kind of a hidden gem of slasher movies and of summer camp slashers and that kind of stuff. Like, this probably isn't one that a lot of people have seen, especially when you compare it to Jason and some of the other fare, The Burning even. There's probably more of a groundswell over the last 10 years or so to see more of this than there would have been prior to that, right, Smoak?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, and also look now at what you have with The Mutilator. You had The Mutilator that came out in 1984, and now they have a sequel to that coming out soon.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I mean, you could do that, I guess. I mean, you would have to. I don't know that you would be able to use the same actor.
No, but that I wouldn't think that's entirely necessary, anyways. Considering the look of Madman Mars, Yeah. It's kind of like Jason. Like, it could be anybody under there. Really, it doesn't have to be the same dude.
He's already dead, right? I mean, they're calling him up.
Yes.
I mean, it's the zombie version of Jason, sort of. I mean, as far as an unstoppable, or Michael Myers for that matter. Sort of unstoppable killer.
I guess that does beg a couple questions. Number one, is Madman Mars dead? Like, throughout this movie, is he like an immortal,
like a spirit?
Yeah,
or whatever?
Some immortal fucking thing that lives in the woods. Is he, or is it just?
They desecrated his site, right? His grave site thing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he's supposed to have been dead. I mean, what? But I mean, even that though, what did they bury?
Yeah.
It could be argued either way, I guess. That he wasn't in that grave or whatever.
Mm.
The way I took it personally is that he is. They are calling him up, sort of supernatural in a way,
because they said his name above a whisper. I like that little caveat, because that's how they differentiate it from Bloody Mary. Usually it will be like, if you say his name 3 or 4 times, here he comes. But no, this one's just if you say it above a whisper, here he comes.
That is. Did I whisper it? Oh, I don't know if I whispered it.
Yeah, what's the whisper line? How many?
Level of,
yeah, how many decibel levels do you have to get over before he shows up? So I guess one last thing I guess we could I can ask you about. What did y'all think of the makeup job of Madman Mars? Like, what did you think of the look of Madman Mars?
I thought if you were thinking of this hillbilly woodsman that sort of come back from the dead, so to speak, that I guess they struck that right. I mean, he's got the coveralls. He's got the nose thing where part of his nose got cut off, which they mentioned in the folklore.
Yeah, they did mention that. Yeah.
and his wild ass hair and the beard and all that stuff. It's very backwoodsy. Like it kind of gives you that vibe too, that backwoods hillbilly vibe.
Mm. Donnie, what'd you think of the look?
Not really anything, special about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like,
I only asked because like that's the one thing that kind of brought it down just a slight peg for me, was like the look wasn't. I mean, I think it's fine. It's fine for what it is. I'm not, shitting on it too hard. It's just they spend a good portion of the movie not showing you his face.
yeah, I would have
too much.
I would have rather of them not show whatever the fuck.
Yeah, I get it.
Just don't show his face.
Yeah, or at least show it very little. Like it's like the Jason deal. Like he's got the mask. You don't have to go crazy, but usually once in the movie, you're going to see somebody knock that mask off, and you're going to, oh fuck, he's all fucked up, and then they put the mask back on, move on. So I think
that's another thing that it has in common with The Burning. Not that they look the same, but that the makeup for The Burning wasn't that great, and that's because Tom Savini himself said that he didn't have time.
Yeah.
The time that he would have liked to have made the look of Cropsey in that movie the way he wanted it to. So he was kind of rushed. So yeah, he was kind of a what do you call that, not a letdown, but a little bit of a disappointment when you see Cropsey. He's not as fucked up again as you would think he would be in the same thing, I guess, with Madman.
Yeah, I'm not expecting it to be on par with what you would see today, but I guess I was just expecting the look to be a little better than it was, but so that brings it down just a nudge for me. But I'm sure we'll see if that is reflected in our ratings here in just a second. So, I guess does you guys have anything else you want to point out before we get to the ratings?
Other than I was going to mention about have y'all seen Hatchet at all?
Yeah.
No, I want to see that, and I've just never sit down and watched it.
I've seen the first three.
You've seen what? I've only seen the first one, I think. But I've
seen the first three, and then I've watched Victor Crowley. Which is not,
so how many have there been? 3 or 4? Well, I assume at least 4. I guess 4 or 5.
At least 4. Yeah.
No, I haven't. I think I even own Hatchet on Blu-ray, and I've just never sit down and watched the damn thing.
It seems like I haven't really heard them talk about like special features, what exactly they were influenced by. But I would have to say, Madman Mars would be a little bit of influence for Victor Crowley, because but if you were to take the Madman up, do it the way that maybe you're thinking in your head that it should look, you pretty much, I would think you would come up with a Victor Crowley look.
Yeah, and you're not wrong there, because I have seen Victor Crowley. I've seen the makeup. I've seen what he looks like.
Yeah.
You're definitely, you might have nailed it right there.
And the axe, the hatchet. So I don't know if they were made. I'm sure they had to be somewhat influenced by Madman.
Yeah. One thing I didn't really like was just like how he looked kind of grayish. It's like, I guess maybe rotting skin. I know he's old, and we're not really sure if he's like you mentioned. Like we're not really sure if he's an entity or like a spirit or a fucking ghost, or if he is really this really old, fucked up looking man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. About the mask being that you have two colors that are there's no contrast. The hair and the beard are white, and the mask is that light grayish look, so you don't really have contrast there.
Yeah, I wasn't really a fan of the makeup. Just not really anything special.
Now, yeah, maybe that's the way to put it. It's like, it's not bad. It's just nothing special, So, but I think that for me, it just took it down a little nudge. So, I guess I'll go ahead and get us started with the star ratings. I really love this movie. I think it's a very good example of a summer camp slasher flick, but it's not quite just for recency bias, so to speak. We just talked about The Burning back in June last month, and it's not as good as The Burning. I'm not saying anyone has said that it is, although I'm sure there are certain people out there that say, no, this is better, but in my opinion, this isn't quite up to the level of The Burning. But that being said, I really enjoy this movie. So I'm gonna go a flat 3 stars. Donnie, what do you got?
I did like this one, and like I said, I had seen it before several years ago. I haven't seen it since. I did think it was kind of slow, but still, despite all that, I'd still recommend watching it. Would I see it again? Yeah, I'd probably see it again. I'm gonna echo your rating and give it 3 stars.
All right, Professor, that leaves you.
Yep, yeah, and mine pretty much on par with y'all. I didn't like it as good as The Burning. It's up there as far as 80s slasher movies go. It's up there. There's a ton of them that came out, and there's a ton that are way worse. So I really do like Madman. don't like it quite as much as Burning.
Yeah,
Pretty much the same as, and for the same reasons that we had mentioned. It's sort of a the makeup job it gets the job done, but I mean it's not not the greatest. You would expect maybe a little bit more, but then we said that about Cropsey. You would expect a little bit more from Cropsey too, but that movie just had a little bit more other stuff going on that raised the bar a little bit more on it. So kills, he had some decent kills. We talked about that, like the hood, jumping on the hood and cutting her head off and trying to start it, and so it had some interesting kills. It's not the most inventive kills. I mean, decapitations we've seen many times before. It's got the hanging scene was pretty cool. And even though when you think about hanging, that's not, when you talk about slasher movies, you usually think of splatter, and the hanging is off. But it was cool the way they set that up. But with him, his whole thing of like putting this rope around people's necks, because he did it to, how many people did you do that to? At least 2, right? Where he drug them through the woods with a rope on the neck.
Yeah, and that was part of his. That was part of his origin lore, right? Yeah. Like about the hanging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool that he like throws this rope around and he just drags him to the woods and then tries to drag him up and hang him on on a tree limb. And he did get to do that with I can't remember the guy's name right now.
TP.
TP. Yeah, TP.
Yeah, TP's the one who hung you. Yeah. You can't forget you can't forget the belt buckle if nothing else.
Right, belt buckle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's got some cool kills in it, but nothing really jumps out at you as super inventive or whatever. But get the job done. And we'll get to the gore score level and all that stuff a little later. But I think I'm going to go with I gave the Burning 3 3/4 stars. So what I'm kind of wrestling with is where I want to give this, right where y'all were, or I'm going to give a little bit more. But I think I'm going to stick with a 3. I'm going to echo the 3.
And that's the beautiful part of, as we always say about the 4th anniversary show, is that if you want to have a little bit more time to stew on it, you can go up or down there. So there is that. But and as we said earlier, Will's not with us. He's on assignment, so we will get his thoughts on it very soon, and we'll let you know what the total consensus is. But as far as all 3 of us, we give it 3 stars across the board. So that means even adding his in, unless he gives it a 0 or something, there's a steep curve. That means we're probably going to be in that 2.5 to 3 star neighborhood overall. So we'll find out when he's able to come back on. But we're not quite done with this one yet.
Connections from the crypt.
I always like to let it finish. For the crew side, special effects artist Matt Vogel did the special effects for Madman, worked on the special effects crew for Madman. He also ties back to our previous episode on Street Trash, long time ago. And a more recent episode 100, he did the he was on the special effects crew for Frankenhooker.
Ah.
So that's the crew connection, and we also have one cast connection. And, we mentioned it previously, Galen Ross ties back to our Creep Show episode.
And she will eventually tie into Dawn of the Dead whenever we finally get around to that one.
Of course.
That is one of the big ones. We will get there.
That would be it for her filmography.
And then we just did her entire filmography, unless we dive into her documentaries. But yeah, we'll get the kill count from Will next time he's on. But for now...
Gore score.
Yep, and I did reference my Chaz Valen Deep Red Horror Handbook, where he has the gore score in the back of it. Also, he's got a gore score book. It pretty much reprints the stuff that was in the back of Deep Red. But at any rate, anybody listening to the show long enough knows that the gore score is based on Chaz's gore score that he created for his columns in Gore Zone and his Deep Red magazine and his Deep Red book and his gore score book and more gore scores. There's some stuff out there for you to track down if you want some good old school horror. But at any rate, he gave this one a 4 for the gore score. And what I usually do is if he's done one, I'll reference it and I'll mention it on the show, and then I'll decide whether I want to go with that or up it or make it or down, bring it down or whatever. I don't know. It had a couple of decapitations, some axe chopping. Not that it was super gory, but the fact that it's kids too. Remember when they're telling his backstory of his folklore, He killed his wife, then he killed his son and his daughter. And they kind of, as they're telling the story, they kind of show this. I mean, it's not super graphic, but damn, he's talking about, and then he goes into the room and he chops his son, and then he goes across the hall into the other room, and there's his daughter, and he whacks her in the head, or however they, say it.
Yeah.
Story, kind of show it. So, I mean, it's kind of like, damn, you're like, damn, that's really fucked up. Even though it's not super gory, I mean, it's, usually you don't see, that's another thing we didn't really mention, that the kids in the camp, of course, none of them get killed, but usually in these movies, you don't see any slasher movies. Generally, kids are kind of off limits when it comes to that. If they should be, But this one breaks that taboo a little bit when they're telling his backstory. And anytime you do that, that's kind of, it's pretty messed up if you're going to show that. So that alone goes up in the gore score a little bit. You have the inventive and humorous decapitation by car hood that we talked about. You have the hanging, which is not gory, but just well done.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, it's brutal. And then you have the meat hook, which is pretty cool. I mean, he what did he do right before the meat hook? He did something else to her, right? I forget now.
He slashed her like on the jaw.
Slashed her jaw, and then you actually see her cheekbone.
Yeah.
Like a cheekbone under there. Then he hangs her on the meat hook, and then she pulls out the knife and stabs him. So that, that's a little bit of decent amount of little gore right there. And like as I said too, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Tobe Hooper wasn't trying to be overly gory. He was trying to actually do some stuff in that movie that would make your mind kind of go to certain places to complete the nastiness of a scene, like limbs being sawn off. He didn't really, saw too many people up for Texas Chainsaw Massacre on screen. But for the meat hook scene, you see him hang Sally Hardesty on the meat hook, and you see her back, and then you see her reaction to it, but you never see a meat hook come out of the front side. Well, Madman actually shows the meat hook coming out the front, so you got that gore as well. I think I'm gonna go with a 5. I'm gonna bump it up 1 from Chaz's.
And in that last scene there, where he puts her on the meat hook or whatever, there's all the other dead bodies in that room too. So you kind of see the whole collection there, right before it burns.
Yep.
What happens there? I don't forget what caused the fire. Did a lantern knock over or something? Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was a candle or a lantern. It was a candle on a table. When she stabbed him, he knocked it over when he's like, oh! And then it starts the fire because there's hay right there, right? A whole bunch of hay.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. I just blank. I just remember like the weird transition, like the slow dissolve when the fire starts, and then he just kind of and then it dissolves away to the whole Max Ritchie scene. So yeah, there you go. That's Madman, and that's our thoughts on it. And we'll get Will's as soon as first chance we get when he comes back on the show. Before we completely tap out on this one, though, I'll give you the usual aggregate scores, the critics. IMDb gives it 5.1 out of 10 stars. Now that's more of an audience score, but that's the score that they give on IMDb. And then on Rotten Tomatoes, this is rare. The tomato meter and the audience score are the exact same percentage. Both are at 36%. Not very good, but not the worst, so.
Yeah.
But, you don't expect this type of movie really to get high critic marks, so there you go. All that matters is that we love it, so there you go. Next week, we go back to Cult Corner, and we spun the wheel over on Deadline Horror News to choose this one, and we landed on Summer Camp from 1979. Now, this was my choice, although it was the luck of the wheel that chose it, so I can't be completely to blame for this, right?
Well, I mean, you kind of had your pick of what movies to submit.
Donny is saying you don't get the easy way out.
Yeah, shit. Yeah, well, here we are.
That's all right.
And here we will be next week for our next Cult Corner.
You know what, though? I can't really say anything because, of my crapster piece.
Yeah, you're 4-0 crapster piece streak, until Smoak finally beat it with Camp Blood. But I'll read the synopsis from IMDb for Summer Camp. The director of a failing summer camp decides to invite campers from 10 years ago for a free weekend event, hoping that he can trick them into fixing up the place. And there's more, but I'm just going to leave it there. So, yeah, we'll get into that next week. Really, I guess that's it, guys. We'll let the Legend of Madman Mars play us off here in the end. So, I guess for Donny, the Professor Smoak, and of course Will, who couldn't be with us, I'm Josh, and we are the All-American Spook Show podcast. And Camp Spook Show continues next week for our latest Cult Corner, Summer Camp.
Lore of the campfire, telling of his horror. the madman and the stars. Don't laugh at the tales. Heed if you call him the legend lives. Beware the madman Mars. The legend lives. Beware the madman Mars.
It's now 9:30, and that's lights out time. 9:30, as you know. Tomorrow is Parents' Day, and you must look rested or Morty will be sent to the state penitentiary.